Alright, so here's another episode of The Lightning.
That's lightening, not lightning. It's got an E in the middle. I was about to say they're completely different, but maybe they're not. Maybe that's what a thunderstorm is God adding the highlights to this great impressionist etching of his. Can you tell what it is yet? No, God, not at all. What's it supposed to be? It looks like a one-eyed bearded salamander having a fight with a moosefish. Did I nail it? Wicked.
Lightning 02, where we delve into the mailbag and respond to a letter.
Or two.
This is from MH.
Those two.
T. Sorry, it was MT, not MH.
We're not quite as well prepared as Sesame Street, folks. We're getting there, though.
Dear Honey Badgers, I've been thinking for some time about finding a way to initiate dialogue about the subjects that are the focus of your attention. The thing that finally inspired me to contact you was the BBC documentary on masculinity and your marathon reaction to it, because it provides two clear and solid reference points on which to anchor a comparison. I'm not entirely sure what your objectives are, but I can almost guarantee that the stated objectives of the MRA...
Okay. Just to fucking stick a pin in this once and for all. MRA is the singular. MRM is the group. That might sound like a minor mistake. I mean, all you did was completely overlook the difference between this entire group and an individual within it. And it's not like that's the exact definition of prejudice. I mean, you just refer to the Jews collectively as the Jew. What? What's the problem? I don't know the difference. Why should I know the difference? Why is that important, though?
Let's try that again. I'm not entirely sure what your objectives are, but I can almost guarantee that the stated objectives of MRA...
Fuck me, you've even dropped the. We're already an extra layer in. It's just Jew. We need to get rid of Jew. I'm sorry to go both Godwin and Orwell so early on, but you're already a generation ahead of Hitler when it comes to newspeak. And yes, that goes for everyone who still calls the MRM the MRA. You know, I don't refer to feminists as the feminist. However much I dislike their chosen ideology, I still recognise the difference between an individual and their group. I recognise it enough to have learned two different fucking terms. Feminist and feminism. That's just one letter as well, but it's a very important difference. Because everyone knows how dangerous it is not to know the difference between an individual and their group. That's when prejudice starts its long, dark, gloomy journey towards genocide. And yet you think it's fine to do that very particular thing to this particular category of human rights advocates. You think it's just a minor mistake, a slip of the tongue, a trip of the dactyl. You probably think I'm overreacting right now, don't you? Oh my God, Mike, why are you making such a big deal over one letter? Even though I just explained to you that it's exactly like calling the Jews the Jew. And that wasn't a minor problem, was it? It wasn't a causal factor of anything, but it was certainly a symptom of a huge fucking problem, wasn't it? And the Nazis probably would have reacted the same way. It's just one letter. Who cares? Why are you overreacting? Jews, who cares? Because genocide, friends. I don't like it. It's not on my Christmas list.
Let's read that while sounding out the acronym. I'm not entirely sure what your objectives are, but I can almost guarantee that the stated
We're laughing at you because you're ridiculous. Because you talk like a historically well-documented genocidal maniac. And you don't understand why that's a problem.
I'm not entirely sure what your objectives are, but I can almost guarantee that the stated objectives of men's rights activist, a voice for men, will not be achieved on the path that you are currently on. The stated objectives of men's rights activist will not be achieved on the path you're currently on. Well, maybe you should contact men's rights activist about that.
Yeah, he probably works for a voice for men. That's what MRA is short for. Mr. A, voice for men. And then when you've done that, be sure to go see The Man Going His Own Way. I think you can find him on the Red Chans.
But regardless, let's move on. I have suspected this from the time I came into contact with material advocating for men, and your reaction to the BBC documentary has cemented this opinion enough that I am certain it's worth your time to read this. Okay, I'm not entirely sure what your objectives are, so I assume that what he's saying is that Honey Badger Brigades, he's not sure what our objectives are, but he's sure that what path we are on now will not attain the objectives of the men's rights movement or a voice for men.
I've never been affiliated with a voice for men. By the way, nothing against them. I'm just giving you trivia, really. I'm affiliated with Honey Badger Radio. But you're not saying, here's where I think Honey Badger Radio is doing it wrong. You're saying, here's where the very act of men's rights advocacy is wrong. There are even men's rights advocates who don't affiliate with any organisations at all. Dare I say, most of them don't affiliate with any organisations because men's rights is not an organisation. It's a category of human rights. And what you're telling us is these human rights are not going to be activated by activating them. You're telling us that activating rights is not the correct path to activating human rights. We get this a lot. Is that you think you have a good argument because the sense that you have a good argument is what's left over when you take everything anyone knows about language and go smash. Things are not what they are. If builders want to build something, then they shouldn't be builders because builders can't build. Yeah, it's just because some contractor fucked up your kitchen extension, that doesn't mean you get to forget how language works. It's very often the same people who say, if you're not a feminist, you're not a women's rights advocate. Because those are obviously exactly the same thing, but with two different names. Those very same people will turn around and just as happily say, I advocate for men's rights, but I'm not a men's rights advocate. You know, because those are two completely different things. It's fucking upside down land. That's how it works. A pro-female identity is mandatory by default, and a pro-male identity is forbidden by default. But they're not mandated and forbidden by the law, they're mandated and forbidden by these fucking language tricks that people think they can play. Well, I wasn't born yesterday, sir or madam. You can tell Malcolm X that you think Malcolm X is doing it wrong, but you can't tell the civil rights movement that civil rights will not result in civil rights. It is, by definition, the only thing that will result in civil rights because it is the same fucking thing. And when you claim it's not, make it very fucking obvious. So you're not here for constructive criticism at all. You're here for destructive criticism. Starting with destroying language. Well, fuck off. It's a good thing Alice is here because I would have stopped reading at this point. It's the least I could do. When the author stops thinking, I stop reading. When the author officially destroys the fundamental rules of language, I lose interest in the things they're trying to say with language. Fucking dipshit.
Okay. I suggest each and every one of you to take some time when you're rested, full, warm, relaxed, and in a good mood to watch it again, fully and without interruption, and really listen. Grind your teeth if you must, but you must listen. You must listen because you must understand and empathize with your enemy.
Yeah, perchance are you about to break out that Dalai Lama quote that you hippies love so much? When we talk, we are only repeating what we already know. But if we listen, we may learn something new. Yeah, we get it, Lama. You talk, we listen. That's how it works. You're a fucking shining beacon of compassion. That is what you're saying. You're not saying everyone should listen instead of talking, are you? Because if no one's talking, then there's nothing to fucking listen to. You're just arbitrating who gets to talk. You're just finding a very fluffy, very plausibly deniable way of saying, I talk, you listen. The plebs need to shut the fuck up and listen to the holy people. Well, fuck you, Lama! In this life and the next.
Demonizing and yelling at the enemy is for propagandists and not for generals or fighters.
Okay, well, I'm not a general or a fighter either. I don't know why you think you can win us over by glorifying military combat. That's dark to say the least. But yes, demonizing is indeed the business of propagandists. The BBC spent an hour of airtime demonizing the male gender and anyone who appears to care about it. A government corporation that exists on taxpayer funding is now in the business of broadcasting shameless, one-sided propaganda to an audience of millions. Pardon the living fuck out of me if I wish to yell about that to an audience of thousands. And even if I grant you your argument that we're just as bad as the BBC, are we just as big as the BBC? Do we pose the same scale of threat to society? I mean, you're writing to us to say, please don't demonize this government corporation. Did you also write to the BBC to say, please don't demonize half the population, given that you steal money from the British public in order to do it? And Honey Badger Radio takes nothing but voluntary funding, and they are 1,000 times smaller than you. Did you completely forget to address the pissed off elephant in the room while you lecture the pissed off mouse on which it's stamping? And what if I don't grant you your argument that we're just as bad as the BBC? What if we actually have a good reason to be pissed off by the elephant stamping on us?
You can still disagree with everything and anything, but you must internalize Reggie's conclusion at the end. Your perspective is massively warped. You can still be convinced that, in fact, his perspective is massively warped, but you must begin to accept that yours is as well.
Is that it? Is that the end? Because might be done already. I have little to no time for fundamentalist agnostics. Yeah, in some way, you're in the same category as dependent sycophants. That one friend we've all had at some point who just agrees with everything everyone says, just because they find it easier than ever risking a conflict. I like Twiglets too. Yeah, they're great. And yeah, I hate them mud rats too. Yeah, grr. And then when they're talking to two people who disagree with each other about something, they have a mental meltdown because they don't know who to agree with. And another subcategory is compulsive contrarians. People who disagree with everything everyone says, just because for some fucking reason they find that easier than a normal conversation. So when they're talking to two people who disagree with each other about something, by mutually exclusive dichotomy, they have a mental meltdown because they don't know who to disagree with. But fundamentalist agnostics have found a way around this mental meltdown. They don't independently agree with everyone. They don't compulsively disagree with everyone. They simply believe themselves to be automatically intellectually superior to everyone else. And by automatically intellectually superior, I do, of course, mean morally superior. To fundamentalist agnostics, there is no such thing as a mutually exclusive dichotomy. If they're talking to two people who disagree with each other about something, the conclusion is obvious. The argument itself must be wrong. If I don't know the answer, me, the smug fucking hippie in question, if I don't know the answer, then the entire argument is pointless and you're both wrong for having it. Even if one of you is 1,000 times the size of the other and started the argument and is a professional thief, and the 1,000 times smaller one survives on voluntary donations, and if that microscopic party says we're women's rights advocates and we're also men's rights advocates, and the gigantic corporate thief party says we're women's rights advocates and we hate men's rights advocates, well, obviously this is a stalemate. Shut up, both of you. You're clearly equal and opposite sides of the same coin. I mean, I can't see any imbalance here, and I'm the smartest person in the fucking world. So stop having this pointless argument and just keep everything the way it is. All right, nothing, no change needs to be made here. Nothing. Let's keep this thing exactly the way it is. Let's keep this thing exactly the way it is. There, I fixed everything by fixing nothing. By opposing the very act of fixing. Like, I don't quite know what to make of you, fundamentalist agnostics. You are the elite agents of the status quo. If all you do is try to prevent arguments from happening, then all you do is preserve the status quo. Whatever it happens to be. So in a good world, you would uphold the good, and in a bad world, you would uphold the bad. That's why I say it's hard to judge you, because you're just empty shells of human beings. But the thing is, you are every bit as dangerous as religious fundamentalists. Because you will fill the same void, or indeed mould, as them, as soon as they're in the majority. You will join them in pretending there is no elephant in the room. I'd go to the most fucked up Middle Eastern theocracy you can and say the unbelievers are just as bad. Don't act like you wouldn't, you would. Yeah, they have people like you over there. In droves. It's what they have instead of unbelievers. How do I know this? Because it's the same in every country. Whenever bullshit is invented by people who are certain they have the right answer, it is inevitably buttressed by the straddling masses of blowhard fundamentalist agnostics who simply think they're better than everyone. You are not just part of the problem, you are a supporting structure of the problem.
You have fallen...
Fuck me, that wasn't even the end. Oh.
You have fallen down. Very deep down.
Saturday night. I'm going to let Alison talk for a while, or I'll get upset again.
The rabbit hole of your advocacy and have lost touch with reality. I am not attempting to claim that you have lost touch with any truth or moral values that you may be fighting to uphold, but you have lost touch with reality. I'm not sure how truth and reality got opposed in that paragraph, but I'm guessing that he's saying that we've lost touch with the reality of Reggie's reality. And that's what I'm getting from this. Deliver on the subject line. To deliver on the subject line, here is what a detached observer could see. A few women and one man gathered in a virtual environment to vent. They are living in countries where women can plot and kill their husband or live-in boyfriend and be considered not guilty, based on renaming revenge as accumulated emotional self-defense. Not sure where that little detail sort of applies, but it would suggest that if we live in a culture in which women can kill men, based on their emotional states, we might be living in a culture where reality is a little warped. But I guess we've lost touch with reality, but not with truth. So they are taking the equivalent of a full workday spread over 3 days of their Christmas holiday to watch a 55-minute documentary in 20 seconds pieces. They must pause after every 20 seconds, and they take the opportunity to comment angrily, shout and ramble on, and on, restating long-held and known beliefs, opinions, facts, and anecdotes. As I've said multiple times, the reason why we need to pause in 20-second increments is due to the DMCA and the shadow rules that YouTube seems to have about DMCA, about copyright protection. Specifically, YouTube will pull your video if you broadcast more than 20 seconds of anything that's copyrighted. It's unfortunate, but it's a reality. And I don't understand what he's saying. He's saying that, even though we have to pause 20 seconds, we don't have to pause 20 seconds and then rant for 5 minutes about the situation. It is what it is. I will clarify that my Christmas break didn't start till Christmas, so we had this completely done before I was on my Christmas break. Not everyone's Christmas break starts a week before Christmas. Sometimes it starts the day of and then goes a week or so after.
Or 2 days or so. And I spend those 2 days with my family. But the rest of December is just December. Which in my case, and a lot of people's cases, is rather fucking busy. I have a few precious hours each day in which to unwind and let off steam. And I don't do it just by watching the television. I let off steam by yelling about the worst parts of the television in the company of friends and thousands of people who are quite ready and willing to listen. And yes, it took 3 sessions to get through, because 10 accumulated hours is how long it takes 2 badgers and a panda to unravel the propaganda piece on which a tax-paid government corporation spent thousands of man-hours, if you'll pardon the faux pas.
But regardless, and I'm surprised he didn't even mention the fact that on New Year's Eve, or Christmas Eve, we actually had a broadcast for people who are men specifically who are depressed during the holidays. I mean, if anybody wants to say that we're nutcases who are overly attached to something, I think that would say it.
No, we don't help men, Alison, remember? We just yell at the TV. I mean, quite a lot of men, and indeed women, tell us, please keep doing what you're doing. We love it when you yell at the TV. Yeah, and we also talk to them in person at Christmas and New Year's. Fucking monsters, yeah. Just as monstrous as the government corporation that spent the holidays demonizing men. Editing a propaganda piece to malign half the population. Even the fucking peasant boys. Especially the fucking peasant boys. It's the story of when Sauron stole Christmas, dude. And you're sat there saying, you hobbitses need to back up for a second. Maybe you're both wrong. Yeah, I'm going with fuck you.
But, whatever. How would a detached observer describe this? How would the authors of the documentary react watching it?
Well, I should think the authors of this documentary would be none too pleased, given that they are in the business of refining propaganda. And people in the business of refining propaganda are usually none too pleased about any opposition to the narrative whatsoever. As for a detached observer, I don't need to imagine the reaction of a detached observer. I'm listening to one right now. You sound very detached indeed. And your reaction is, hey mouse, stop squirming, or the elephant won't stop stamping on you. Oh, and what elephant?
Although I'm very tempted to answer these questions myself, I strongly believe that it's much more valuable for you to answer them for yourselves. I hope you find my restraint inspiring.
Yes, I do. If that was restrained, then what were you restraining? What would you sound like if you weren't restrained? It'd just be shut the fuck up, you stupid mouse. Wouldn't it? The elephant didn't do nothing. Stop getting mouse entrails all over its feet. And what elephant?
And put in effort needed to really reflect on and answer these questions. And I also strongly suspect every word I type decreases the probability that you'll read this. So I doubt I can afford to include my impressions. Alright, this is really obnoxious. Like, MT... Like on the side, you have this interesting superiority martyr complex going on. Like, why would I find your restraint inspiring? Just say what you mean, and I don't. And it's just baffling. I'm supposed to find your restraint inspiring and be inspired to do something by your restraint, in not insulting us, which is basically what you're doing. I mean, sure, yeah, it's a valuable exercise to go out of your head and look at what you're saying from someone else's perspective. But I'm not going to admire your restraint for not doing that. And further, not only do you immediately... I mean, why don't you just get out of your head and imagine being me reading this? I am restraining myself from saying some very insulting things about you. I hope you find my restraint inspiring and insult yourself for me. And also, I know that every word I write is making it that much less likely that you'll even read me. And it's like, get off your fucking cross. We need the nails.
You claimed all this time that you would die for me. Why then are you so surprised when you hear your own eulogy?
Anyway, this is one of the things that makes YouTube comments so painful. It's not the fuck you, fuck you, mad marsupials, fucking fuck. Not that shit. It's this. It's this shit. It's this martyrdom and this superiority and this moral grandstanding. Regardless, no matter what the answers are made,
It's still not the end. Fucking hell.
be, there is no room in them for one important adjective, effective. Okay, and this is where the letter sort of spins off into crazy town. But to answer this, I'm sure that the BBC would consider us quite mad, quite insane, and completely ineffective. We're just a bunch of lunatics on the internet ranting about reality. And I'm sure that's the opinion that they would have of us. In fact, I'm hoping it is.
For the record, I have acted on the BBC and written for the BBC. Nothing came of it in either case, of course. It's just as well, because I don't think I'd have enjoyed working there.
No matter what the answers may be, there is no room for them for one important adjective, effective. To illustrate, I'll compare to another documentary I saw recently, Dear Zachary. I recognize that you don't have a comparable budget, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's right. Dear Zachary was effective, at least as far as the stated objectives of the protagonists. And then there's a massive spoiler warning, but there's no spoilers. So that's interesting. And just to sum up, because I can't read this is like several thousand words.
You fucking shitting me?
Essentially what he says is Zachary was effective because going through the process of creating Dear Zachary prevented the elderly couple from committing suicide. However, this is what he has to say. The fact that the paragraph of law that they received as consolation prize does absolutely nothing to strike at the cause. I need not say it, you know it, it is all around us. You can see it when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. You saw it at your child's graduation, Karen. I'm pretty sure that this letter was mostly addressed to Karen and on the whole, because a lot of this particular details are related to her life. I also equally know that Karen's response to this letter was probably, next. Luckily, MT also sent it to the mailbag that I frequent. But anyway, regardless with that, what's interesting about his statement about Dear Zachary is that he says that Dear Zachary was effective But only effective in preventing the elderly couple that made it from committing suicide. Otherwise, it just illustrated the complete nihilistic pointlessness of any kinds of men's rights activism. So you're saying that Dear Zachary was ineffective completely?
Yeah. You don't like our proposition that the men's rights movement should be effective. The problem with these men's rights advocates is they do too much, and they don't get anything done. They need to stop trying to get things done. And then we totally won't accuse them of never getting anything done. I'm sure that does make sense in your head somewhere, MT, and the rest of you. And by Jove, am I talking to a lot of people right now. That's the problem. This somehow works in your heads. This fucking game, this mental blood sport scapegoating, where you take a concept, drag it out into the abyss, and watch it disappear from everyone's memory once again. Yes, it's more of the same linguistic conjuring tricks. This origami black hole forever folding in on itself like a salvia trip.
That is the perfect illustration of the contrast between the values society claims individuals should embody and the values that are actually rewarded by the individual members of society. Like, I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to get out of... What is it you feel is effective about Dear Zachary? That it prevented an elderly couple from committing suicide? In which case, the rant Zerker prevents me from committing suicide. Let's just... Okay? Then it's equally valued. Equally as effective, because it sounds like you're not saying that Dear Zachary is effective at all, except in illustrating the nihilism of society and the fact that people who don't play by society's rules get punished by genetic annihilation.
If we're measuring things in terms of lives saved by suicide prevention, then I would rather not do that. Because I don't know how to measure that. As tempting as it might be to use that as a data point in my favour, I don't find it ethical to measure anything in saved lives, because that sounds like it might result in owed lives, and nobody owes me their life. And however many such thank you messages I get, when I ask myself how many lives have I saved, the only answer I can accept is one. My own. You save your own life. And if I happen to be there when you saved yours, then I'm honoured. Congratulations for saving your own life for another day. Don't let anyone use your life as a bargaining chip in an argument. Because that sounds like a hell of a dick move to me.
Okay, spoilers end here, although there were none. The most immediate cause currently holds the title of justice. Stop, breathe it and say it aloud. Justice. This is what justice currently is defined as in the space you are taxed for being allowed to occupy right now. The BBC documentary is what reality is currently defined in their country. Both are absurd but must be accepted before they can be changed. You play from a position of extreme weakness. This means only objective facts can help you advance. Trying to use the same emotional weapons as your enemy will likely turn more people than it attracts, because most people have already been repeatedly exposed to the enemy's weapons to such a degree that they consider it a moral virtue to fight against their own self-interest.
That is a point, but we've tried. Arguing logically and calmly. Every 6 ways from Sunday we've tried it. Logic doesn't work against people who play these linguistic games. People who can take any word or concept they don't like and throw it down a fucking Penrose staircase. So, we're trying out some emotional arguments. Because this is all we've got left. And there's a functionally infinite number of emotional arguments, but there's only a finite number of logical arguments, and we've exhausted them all. If we say it briefly and concisely, they go, we need more information. And then when we include all the details, they go, oh my God, why is it so long? Can't you condense this? It's what they do, back and forth, to and fro, erase, rewind, repeat, on and on forever. They have created a psychological machine that meticulously filters out and disposes of every last trace of consistent logic. That is why I, for one, am now reduced to madly thrashing at the machine with a plastic spatula. I'm very glad I pronounced that right. Either way, I told myself it would do for a title.
I figure you appropriate your enemy's weapons wherever you can, and then use them towards your own ends, but...
Yes. Unfortunately, a lot of people can't tell the difference between using the enemy's weapons and wearing the enemy's colours. So they bitch at you for being adaptive and effective. Because they're not actually interested in ending this war. They just really like other people fighting it.
A central part of the folklore of your community is awakening to a higher reality.
This is where you really start to lose people. All you needed to say there was the community is learning. But what you said was...
A central part of the folklore of your community is awakening to a higher reality.
See, I don't mind a bit of flowery language every now and again, but when you speak of higher realities and folklores, you sound like a demented monk. Or like you're talking to demented monks. Either way, not very effective, darling.
Some of the reaction videos make it seem like you have not really left Plato's caves, but have merely taken notice of one of the bindings that restrains you and are agitating like a trapped animal.
Barnum statement. Not falling for it. Piss off. Literally any problem any human being can have can be described as a confusion in the scenery of Plato's cave. You think you're sounding intelligent because you fucking heard of Plato's cave, but you could not possibly sound dumber. Because you're saying, I understand Plato's cave better than you people. Which is inherently fucking wrong. If we're all human beings and you understand what the fuck Plato's cave represents. You do not get to lecture us on the contents or mechanics of Plato's cave unless you are superhuman by definition. I like flowery language when it's used in service of a reasonable point. I do not like it when it's used for nothing but fucking ghost fluff. Fuck off.
I get the feeling that this guy really, really, really hates the fact that I get angry during the rant circle. The fact that there are rants in the rant circle. I wasn't shitting you I was not shitting you. I believe it is essential to start to recognize your position, that the nature and magnitude of your enemy. My impression is that you still refuse to acknowledge them as enemies, and that's why you continue to treat reality as fodder for drama and emotional release. Wait a second. I'm sorry, this novel's a little hard to navigate. Okay, so... Alright, demonizing and yelling at the enemy is for propagandists, not for generals or fighters. So are we propagandists yelling at the enemy, or do we not recognize our enemy yet?
Or did you just get the wording wrong? Or does the wording not matter? Could I roll through every synonym of the word enemy and you'd still be contradicting yourself? Because you actually don't have a fucking clue what you're saying, other than a great deal of hot air amounting to stop doing what you're doing! If you want us to stop doing what we're doing, just fucking say so. Why do you have to bury it in this avalanche of faux spiritual, pseudo-intellectual blowhardery? Alison is a very busy woman. She shouldn't have to troll through pages of this chicken shit, when all you mean to say is, I'm holier than everyone and I've decreed you should shut up. Please, just put that in the subject line so we know, so we don't have to waste time looking at your lexical fucking finger paintings. You are worse than ignorant. Until I started talking about gender, I didn't fully realise there was something substantially worse than ignorance. It's intellectual arrogance. An ignoramus is simply a person who doesn't know any of the answers. Someone whose shelves are all empty, if you will. Intellectual arrogance is when you're convinced by default that you already have all the answers. Because you go around every shelf in your brain, every last precipice, every last pigeonhole, and you ram a fucking stone into it. Or just fill it with a bunch of bracken you found on the beach. And you label it, I have the answer! I must have all the answers because I'm the world's most wise, compassionate, peaceful person. Probably because I read 2 fucking pages about Buddhism once. bet you a pound to a penny this cunt is at least casually into Buddhism. It would be perfectly consistent with my findings so far, is all I'm saying. For all the shit Buddhists say about emptying your mind, you all sound to me like all you're doing is filling it with shit. Your own shit. And like every other religious person, you are accustomed to the smell of your own shit. So you think your religion is the one religion that isn't really a religion. It's just a set of techniques named after an ancient celebrity, die. And no one has ever died because of my religion. If people killed each other over my religion, then they're simply doing my religion wrong. And it's no longer my religion, because my religion only does good things, by definition. That's what your mind sounds like when it's not empty, but full to the brim of shit.
Okay. Fair enough. I mean, it is a very long letter. You can get a little bit self-contradictory in something this long. You know, you can get a little irrational, as it were. But regardless, I believe it is essential to start to recognize your position and the nature and magnitude of your enemy. My impression is that you still refuse to acknowledge them as enemies, and that's why you continue to treat reality as fodder for drama and emotional release. The BBC documentary might look, smell, and taste like enemy propaganda, but it is a reality-based entertainment that is perceived as reality. That is why you missed a rare opportunity when you treated it like any random feminist video.
I mean, called it, right? You're just saying, I like this video, so don't treat it like you treat all the other videos. The thing I like is reality, unlike everything else. Yeah, no, fuck you. We've already stated our contention that this documentary did not reflect reality. It did not meet its obligation to reflect reality fairly. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. The BBC took presumably well over 100 hours of footage, and they edited it down to a single hour. They removed the majority of reality, leaving only what they and their agenda wanted to say. We took that 1 hour of heavily edited footage, and we blew it back up to 10 hours of commentary. With our own agenda, yes, but without removing what the BBC wanted to say. We covered it in its entirety. Except the Dapper Laughs bit, we sort of caught the summary of that, because at the time I thought we were going to plough through it all in one, but in the end we felt compelled to cover every remaining second of it, just to make sure that we let the target have its say in full. To make sure we're not doing what the BBC is doing, shamelessly and unapologetically. Think about that. They can take more than 100 hours and turn it into 1 hour. We take that 1 hour and turn it into 10. Now, maybe we're wrong and maybe they're wrong. But whatever angle you look at this from, you can't deny we are in the business of unraveling what they are in the business of tying up. And it's worth noting that etymologically speaking, the word religion is synonymous with the word binding.
If destitution, despair, suicide, murder, and annihilation are not enough to make you ponder the position and trajectory of your advocacy.
Beg pardon?
You haven't connected how these issues are related to our advocacy. Like, you've essentially said that Dear Zachary embraces this nihilistic view of reality, or at least shows it. But how is that effective? How does that change anything? How does that improve anything? You're saying that fighting for the legal change that they fought for was ultimately pointless because they've been taken out of the gene pool. Well, you're essentially saying that Dear Zachary's only effective quality was to prevent an elderly couple from committing suicide. We want to do a little more than that. We want to set the bar a little higher, but and taken. I mean, maybe there is something in this that explains how we can adjust the trajectory of our advocacy to prevent the kind of nihilism you see in Dear Zachary. But my confusion is that you're presenting Dear Zachary as an example of something effective. And the only thing you're saying it's effective at is preventing suicide of two elderly people and presenting the nihilism of society.
Yes. The most dangerous nihilists are the nihilists with no self-awareness. I'm not a nihilist, I love the world and everything in it. Oh, except those icky parts. Destroy! I love everything except that bit icky. Whoops, everything in the universe turned out to be icky and I destroyed it.
I'm very confused at this point. The only thing I can think you might be waiting for is the implementation of a certain infamous hashtag. I'm assuming kill all men. If we ignore the obviously terrifying risks, luring your enemies into attempting to implement it before it actually becomes socially acceptable might just be enough of an overextension on their part to turn the tide. No, we're not trying to lure feminists into implementing kill all men. In fact,
it sounds a little bit like a... Never mind.
I don't even know how you would lure someone into implementing that. I mean, raging at a BBC documentary on the internet, and incidentally, our particular response is the only one that's up at this point, because we abided by the DMC law, the secretive shadow laws regarding YouTube's DMCA. But I don't know how we would lure the feminists into implementing kill all men. In fact, I think that killing all men is becoming less acceptable as society goes on. I mean, that whole hashtag is feeding off of socialization to regard accepting the sacrifice of large amounts of men for large-scale social projects like war is acceptable. So they have a large-scale social project. It's called Utopia, Feminist Utopia, and you know, we could probably convince people that killing a whole bunch of men could bring about feminist utopia. And like I said, we have gone through eras where that was perfectly acceptable. It was perfectly acceptable. Just pile the bodies, just pile the young male bodies in a ditch in the name of this social project.
Did that sound over-dramatic to you just now? What Alison just said? You'll notice she didn't say anything about higher realities and folklore. Because Alison doesn't think she's a fucking wizard. You know, she's a wizard trapped in the body of a dwarf. So she deals with being a dwarf. I'm a dwarf trapped in the body of a wizard. And so on and so forth. So yes, at this moment I'm indeed being dramatic, if dramatic is in this context means indulgent in fantasy. But I admit it, do you see? I don't act like I'm actually a wizard. I admit that I am merely a magician. I present allegorical fantasies for the sake of humour. The BBC, let's not forget, creates skewed fantasies for the sake of manipulating the audience's view on reality itself. And they call it a documentary. I mean, you all say men should be more open, more vulnerable, and then this is how you treat the men who actually try to talk about their vulnerabilities. You interview... I'm talking to the BBC now. You interview Josh O'Brien in the same show in which you interview that thug kid who went down over the Jane Austen thing. It's like, here's two randomly selected young men from the same category of enthusiast. Some of them are talking about restoring due process rights to male students, and some of them are random insult-barking hooligans in the poorest trash neighbourhoods we can find to satiate our fucking witch hunt. But they're basically exactly the same kind of person. Young men who talk on the internet. Specifically to or about women or gender issues. Of course you're not saying anything, are you, BBC? You're just letting the audience make up its own mind. You're saying the destitute and uneducated convicted criminals? They're in the same category as the human rights advocates, okay? It's up to you how you interpret that single category of person. I don't think any of you could know how much history you might be making. Like, we look back on the racism of 100 years ago and think, fuck, how could people even think like that? 100 years from now, That so-called documentary is what people will look back on and go, whoa, really? That was government produced. Taxpayer funded. Yep. What the hell happened? Were there riots in the street? Not over that, no. Pfft. Well, were the taxpayers not angry about it, especially the men? Well, yeah. A lot of them were very angry indeed, but they didn't want to express that anger on any platform of communication because they didn't want to go to prison. That is how fear works. It's very effective like that. The men knew full well that the BBC had effectively just threatened them all with criminal prosecution if they react to this with any dissent, let alone any anger. So the only people who did react to it with the apposite anger were a few people on the internet who thought they'd spend their cold winter nights indoors talking to thousands of people and saying what those thousands of people want to say, but are understandably too afraid to say. Again, pardon the fuck out of me for spending the week before Christmas speaking up for the millions of silenced peasants, and double pardon the triple fuck out of me if it takes 10 hours to represent the interests of millions of pissed off peasants.
The current trajectory is one in which you proclaim major losses as minor losses as minor wins, by the logic of at least a major loss hasn't occurred this time yet, and minor losses, setbacks, and delays and enemy suffers as major wins for your camp. You slowly and organically increasing audience will gradually get you more resources, but the fact that they are only from private citizens of the most average means scattered over the entire planet makes any political or legal advances extremely unlikely.
That's what we're doing wrong. We're too small! Damn it, I knew it was a mistake to make fewer people listen. Yeah, listen, it's popular. That's the answer. And welcome. We need to be welcome, and we need to be popular. You know how I thought the answer was we should be unwelcome and unpopular? No, I was wrong. I was plumb wrong, I was. I forgot to carry the 3. My bad.
What would you suggest? Like, if you have tips for how we could increase our audience or our revenue stream, I'm all ears. But just pointing out that we are trying to get the growth that is possible with us with the platforms available to us. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard fucking work. It's hard, endless work. It's sometimes very terrifying work. I mean, not only have I have committed my career to this. I've committed my career to being able to sell the unsellable concept of men's rights. Like, and I've committed a lot, like my livelihood, my family's livelihood, to the possibility that this could work out. I put a lot of chips on that. I put a lot of chips on men's rights number. And I would love to hear anything that would help increase our audience or increase our revenue. Anything constructive. But simply saying, look at how small you are. That's not constructive. Yeah, I know we're small. I know we're struggling. I know it's going to be hard. I know the mountain is large. Give us some equipment. Just what I do know is that sitting at the base of the mountain pointing out how fucking large the mountain is isn't going to get anyone anywhere. And how small your mountain climbing party is. It isn't going to get us anywhere. Because the thing is that I guarantee we're further ahead in advancing men's issues than you are, MT. If you look past your enemy and look at your competition, we can see that your approach and discourse don't compare favorably. Misogynists going their own way are selling an equivalent emotional product to one feminists are selling to women. Their product is grief, from anger and despair to surrender and detachment for men, while feminism promises conquest and retribution for women. You can notice this contrast and similarities in the reactions of their customers' anger in both ideation of murder, genocide, and mutilation as revenge for the women, ideation of collapse, cause for their detachment for the men. Even so, I have found hypotheses formulated in the MGTOW videos, men going their own way videos, to have startling explanatory powers. They are theorists adept at seeing problems, but they are not motivated to try and win. PUAs sell the promise of sexual access and emotional control. They are also not motivated to win, just to survive as underground rebels, happy with subsistence rating. MGTOW attracts pessimists, men of depth and thought. PUA, pickup artists, attract optimists, the thirsty, and men of action. Who does the faction that is supposedly trying to win, MRA, MRM, AVFM, attract? Okay, well, first of all, AVFM is irrelevant. No, not irrelevant, but it's not. What AVFM does is what AVFM does. This is not, their mandate is not our mandate. We are within the men's rights movement, but we may take different tacks. I don't answer to them, they don't answer to us. We are different entities. So when you say women, I guess, when you say who does the faction that is supposedly trying to win, Honey Badger Radio, attract? Women, I guess. Women, I guess. Yes, because women are so incompetent at creating social change. Yeah, maybe we are trying to attract women. Maybe we're not. Although I do take your criticisms. And I take them very carefully, and I've considered them very carefully. And I have realized who we do sell to. But you know, that's a spoiler. I don't want to give that information out too quick.
Yeah, everything that isn't a spoiler is a teaser. It's one thing you quickly learn when you support men's rights. It's like forever tweaking a shower nozzle in that infinitesimally small sliver of theoretical space between way too hot and way too cold. There's a bad word for everything, and there's a good word for everything. And men get the bad word. Every standard there is an equal and opposite double standard. Makes no sense. That sounds like it makes sense, but it doesn't.
I appreciate and value your inspiring and illuminating speeches and prepared videos. I'm sure they are priceless to the casualties of this conflict. The casualties. The documentary reaction hangout was more ad hoc, so understandably less polished, but it was also leaking false notions and bizarre hypotheses that were clearly generated by an abundance of sympathy for men and the male experience. Well, that's a bad thing. It's neither hard nor surprising to lose your bearings when venturing in uncharted waters, so it's important to watch out for paranoia and confirmation bias. Just because you laugh at internalized misogyny does not mean you don't have a bit of it. To be clear, I personally don't care if you don't have it, if you do have it, but I believe you should care. Okay, this is another one of those things. It just is like really, like it just grates. So you don't care, but you think I should care. Okay, first of all, let me address the issue of me having internalized misogyny. Yes, I have internalized misogyny. And I'm actually thinking that that is one of my best features.
Yeah, quote mine it. Go on. Take it to whatever context you like. And here's another one for your stamp collection. I have internalized misandry. Why do you think I spent 20-odd years thinking feminism's just fine? Self-hatred is something that flares up in quite a lot of people, especially during puberty, or indeed before. But some post-pubescent people learn to love themselves better than others do. No, frankly, I recognised the benefits of hating myself. It evidently leads to self-improvement. But it did dawn on me that one's gender and one's race are not good reasons to hate yourself. Because you cannot improve that. They're just switches that toggle one way or the other when you're born. So I still hate myself, but for the right reasons. I hate myself for being too dumb and too slow, and shitty at music and shitty at animating. Now, a lot of you may disagree, but believe me, that's how I got what you call good at these things. By maintaining a constant belief that everything I've ever done is shit. It's how you keep an upward curve plotted. Don't look down. Act like you're still just a foot off the ground. I know it sounds like I'm down on myself, but it's really not as cynical as that. It's not even immodesty. At this point, it's actually tactical self-awareness maintenance. I mean, it's a little bit like that endless, impossible, self-defeating quest to be a real man. Except it's not tied to a biological toggle switch. It's only tied to the passions I choose to pursue in life. In my case, the composition of sound and vision. I will never be good enough at that. I will never be good enough at what I do. Ever. And I'm fine with that. It's how I like it. The day I die, I'll be thinking, damn, I probably should have tidied up those symbols. Oh well, it'll have to do. I will never be good enough at what I do, but I will always be good enough at what I am. Because by definition, what you are cannot be judged as good or bad. It simply is. I have no interest in wasting any more time and patience hating myself for what I did not choose and cannot change. And that is a position I would wholeheartedly recommend to any other living creature. Man, woman, or hermaphroditic space slug.
For women, the spectrum is from internalized misogyny to thinking your only feature, that the only feature is valuable about you is your womanhood. This is the spectrum. Internalized misogyny to thinking... the thing is that you cannot understand the spectrum if you do not understand how both men and women are impacted by this. Because the spectrums are incomplete for both men and women. For men, internalized misandry is the norm. For women, thinking that their only value or their primary value, and it should be their femaleness, is the norm. So when you put those two together, you have a spectrum from a person who thinks that their femaleness or their maleness is their least attractive attribute, thinks of it as a moral deficit, to someone who thinks of it as their most important attribute. So, and you don't really have that for men. You don't really have men who think that their maleness is their most important attribute. That doesn't usually, it's really impossible psychologically for men, because men don't become men by having gone through puberty. They become men by embodying a set of social expectations. That's why be a man is a thing, whereas be a woman isn't. So you have this spectrum where on one end you have someone who completely devalues their maleness or their femaleness. You could call it internalized misandry or internalized misogyny. Internalized misandry is something that we really don't recognize in society because of what I just pointed out. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have someone who thinks that their maleness or their femaleness is their most important trait. We don't really have that for men, but we do have that for women. I would say that feminism embodies that sort of toxic femininity. Now, if we look at the male situation, and we look at the spectrum for men, most men don't go all the way to internalized misandry so much. I mean, there's a push towards it, but no, most men don't go all the way to internalized misandry, which I would say would be white knighting behavior or one good man behavior, which you see a lot with male feminists. You know, I'm the only good man because of my personal choices. That's the only thing that makes me good, is my personhood. My maleness is a moral deficit, and every other man is fallen compared to me. Now, on the other side of where the middle ground tends to be for men is they don't recognize necessarily a benefit to being male or a moral benefit to being male. However, that allows them to work well with other men in a way that women do not work well with other women. And let me explain this, using now the female side of the spectrum. Women can have internalized misogyny, which is really more like the center of the male spectrum, but how that plays out and why I say that would be my best feature is this. Because I don't think that I deserve anything for being a woman, I can see how other women gain what they gain through their personal actions. When you believe that your most important defining characteristic is being a woman, when you believe in the worth of, let's say, the woman card, you believe that any woman who gets something more than you, you're going to be jealous of her because you cannot recognize her personal actions, that those personal actions should have a greater effect on what she receives as an individual than her womanhood. So you think that she's stolen something from you. Because that woman card should be exchanged for exactly the same thing. Like every woman should get exactly the same. Because the only thing valuable about them is the fact they're a woman. So it's like every woman has the same woman card, and every woman should get exactly the same amount of shit from the woman card. And that's what women who believe in the women card think. So when they see a woman who, through personal effort or even just genetic lottery, gets more than them, they have an unbelievable sense of jealousy. Because they cannot see how her personal actions, or even just accident of birth, is she actually, you know what? Good on her. She has gotten something that other women haven't. Instead, it's like the monkey with the grape versus the banana. The grape versus the cucumber. You know, they did an experiment where they would get monkeys to do a bit of work and then reward them with a grape. And then they started to reward some monkeys with a cucumber, but they would reject it if another monkey was rewarded for the same work with the grape. It's that. Women get seriously fucking pissed if they think one woman gets more for her woman card, and they can't see that she's getting it because she's just an individual with different benefits and different personal choices and personal actions. Now that is toxic femininity. That is the belief that everything should be a result of the woman card. The women should get exactly the same thing as a result of all having the woman card. And the effect of toxic femininity is that women cannot work together. They cannot set aside their jealousies to bring different kinds of talents together and create something. Because they can't recognize that a woman who gets something different than themselves gets it legitimately. So yeah, a little bit of internalized misogyny in terms of saying, hey, the woman card really isn't valuable for a damn thing, actually assists in being able for a woman to work with other women and to enjoy working with other women. So yeah, in a way, I'm a little bit proud of that aspect of my internalized misogyny. And that's where a lot of men are. A lot of men don't go all the way into the good man shit. Most men stay and they just say, well, you know what, my man card isn't worth a good goddamn, but that means I don't have to be jealous of what other men achieve just by having individual talents or individual benefits or their own personal choices. I can work with them to achieve something together. So that's where most men are. And you know, most women are a little bit left of that as well. So they're not all the way into toxic femininity where, oh yeah, my woman card is the only thing of worth. No other woman should get anything other than what I get because of, you know, our women cards should all be worth the same. Which is basically feminism in a nutshell.
Let me guess, y'all, when she said, yes, I have internal misogyny, y'all wanted more details. Then after 7 interrupted minutes of details, your complaint has changed to, oh my god, what, you have to go on and on and on about the details! Yeah, actually, no, we're not going to cater to the finely drawn boundaries of your specific attention span, sweetie. Especially not when, as I said, it changes from boiling hot to freezing cold in a matter of nanometers.
But, you know, so in my mind, my internalized misogyny actually allows me, my belief that the woman card isn't worth really much at all, allows me to work with other women, allows me to allow them to have their particular talents and skills that I may not have. And say, yeah, that's pretty wonderful. I mean, you have an incredible gift with illustrating, you have an incredible gift with drawing, you have an incredible gift with PR, getting out in front of people and making them feel comfortable as you deliver very uncomfortable concepts. You have an incredible rationality and ability to sniff out concepts. I can say these things about other women. You have things I don't have, and I can value that. And that is a result of my internalized misogyny. Because I don't think my woman card is worth a good goddamn. So, you know, I'm not really that... And again, I find it ironic that a man is lecturing me about internalized anything. Okay, let's move on. Again, no, I actually really appreciate this letter. I mean, to be on the whole, I really do appreciate it because he got me thinking. But because I personally don't care if because you can't be effective in the real world if your perception of reality is not accurate. Don't make your enemy your anchor point. That's what reality is for. But you're saying that Reggie's reality is reality. Is that so? We're supposed to anchor ourselves to Reggie's. It's really confusing. If you have ambitions of moving past videos and making a significant impact, not just on hearts and minds, but on actual meat grinder, your sons must dodge. You must be solidly grounded in reality. And even if you don't have these ambitions, your visibility affects people who do and makes their task even harder. Oh, God. Again, with the moralizing. I mean, fine, have as many criticisms as you want, but do you really have to do that? Do you really? Anyway, I sincerely believe that what I have written is of value to you, and I hope that you'll open your hearts and minds and reflect on where you're at and what lies ahead. Warm regards and best wishes for the new year, MT.
Yes. Now I see why your name is MT. And I see why you are MT.
Okay, I actually found this letter very constructive.
Me too. Shit dries like concrete.
Not all of it, I'll be frank, but I did find the part where he says, you know, who are you selling to? That was constructive. It was a very good thought experiment. So thank you, MT. In terms of your concerns, here's what I have to say. You're absolutely right. The BBC is reality for a lot of people. It's reality created by the emotional tenets related to the loathing and self-loathing of men. And according to that emotional reality, we are madness and infamy. But I think you fundamentally misunderstand what the Rant Zerker is and does. Our other shows lay the rational foundation of our conclusions. The Rant Zerker and the Ragening is where we let reason bring us to passion and anger. My anger at the injustices that men face is the point. I express it not just in order for men to realize that there are women prepared to get angry on their behalf. I express it also to exploit an aspect of the human condition. When women get angry, men reject what women are getting angry at. I want my anger to wash over every single man on earth so that he starts to vomit up the self-loathing, every single ounce of self-loathing that people like Reggie and the BBC have forced down his throat. At that point in time, the people who rely on men's self-loathing to control them will no longer be able to control them. My anger is conditioning. It's boot camp. Because I'm going to raise an army that does not obey orders. One by one, the BBC's tools and soldiers will be reconditioned to ignore their orders. Because they will have puked up the control chip. Now, I've addressed and responded to your letter on an emotional level. So let me say this. I know in this process, this is going to make a lot of men uncomfortable. And they're going to be going like, stop, please stop. I'm feeling really nauseous. Allison, please stop. I'm not going to. Because that control chip, that little bit of self-loathing, doesn't belong inside you. Shouldn't be there. And it's the reason why you're submitting to this system. So yeah, I'm going to get fucking angry. And I'm going to direct that anger at the people and institutions and behaviors that cause men to ingest self-loathing or force them to ingest self-loathing. And even though it's uncomfortable, I'm never going to stop. I'm never going to stop getting angry. Not for a single goddamn moment.
Now, That sounds dangerously close to the dreaded buy our product or you hate yourself shtick with which feminists beat women and men. I mean, never mind what that makes the BBC in this context. Never mind buying our product. We produce it from the revenue we already steal from you. And you'd better hate yourself or you'll go to prison. Yeah, let's push that aside for now and focus on the possible ethical inconsistencies of anyone who has a problem with that. Well, let me smooth it out for you. You have 4 options. Indulge us and hate yourself. Indulge us and don't hate yourself. Don't indulge us and hate yourself. Or don't indulge us and don't hate yourself. Or just be indifferent about any of those things. Yeah, it's a nebulous cloud of choices, actually. You might feel comfortable hating yourself. I know I do. But I think. But do bear in mind, some people don't deal with self-hatred quite so well. Like I said earlier, hating yourself can lead to improving yourself. If focused correctly, self-hatred can even have healing properties, rather paradoxically. But if done wrong, it can lead to catastrophes of global proportion. And we are here to offer various perspectives on the nature of such catastrophes, among other things. And please, friends, self-hatred or no self-hatred, please do not pay us a single penny as long as you live, unless you want to. This is the ethic by which we stand. And it would be next level awesome if the BBC could adopt it as well. Like every other broadcasting organisation in the country. You're the only ones who get to say, give us your money or we'll take your thumbs. Oh, and don't talk about your rights on the internet or we'll take your thumbs. What does absolute power do, guys? It gets another season. On QI gets another 13 seasons. And then you get your marching orders, BBC. You got 13 years to get your shit together. You're seeing Lord Fry through to a dignified retirement. And then you are getting your bottom royally spanked, auntie. And yes, I know feminists often do the same thing as us, taking voluntary payments to express their worldview publicly. And we don't have a problem with that as a method of expression or as a method of fundraising. We just think they're talking shit, and we say so. And they think we're talking shit, and they say so. That's not hypocrisy in either camp. You have to actually figure out who is actually talking shit. It might be everyone, it might be no one, it might only be one side, but you have to actually look inside this shit and show your workings. If you're looking for hypocrisy, you have to actually examine people's arguments. That's what we do. We examine people's arguments at length, and we point out what we think are the hypocrisies. And we invite the same treatment towards us. Please do examine our arguments. We welcome it. I would much prefer you actually responding to specific arguments we made, rather than categorically and fatalistically casting everything into your axiomatic principle of fundamentalist agnosticism. And please don't be offended when we examine that argument of yours at length. Happy lightning, y'all. And happy thunder. Thunder? Thunder. Thundercats. Oh! Oh, you all suck.